Alrighty, William here. I picked up a job for building some chalkboards, so I'm going to frame them. Got some pretty straight, clear pine over at Lowe's, and nice full sheet. Okay, about ready to go. Got the router table, 3/8 rabbiting bit on there. I'm going to do it in 2 passes. I've got a bearing on there so I don't really need feather boards, and pulled all the staples out of the stock. 2 or 3 staples on both ends. I was like, come on guys. Time for some production work. Okay, my first pass was a little too deep. You can see I started getting some little chip out. That's what you don't want. So looks like I'm going to need to do 3 passes maybe. We'll see. Shallow ones are better. Better quality work. Easier on your tools. Okay, time for the last pass. For the last pass, I went ahead and clamped up a little feather board to make sure that my depth is nice and consistent. You don't want to put it right over the bit, but on the infeed side, just a little bit of tension just to make sure it stays down. So, final pass. Okay, so I've got the grooves cut for the channels. Hindsight, I wish I would have done it on the table saw. It would have taken a little bit more setup, but not as many passes. So hindsight's 20/20. For those looking at technique, when I was routering, I didn't use a push stick, which I could have and stayed on the right side of the table. Instead, I have a tendency to dance around and move to the outfeed and pull it. Both ways are acceptable. Both ways work. Just depends what you're doing. So with these frames, if I was building them for my house, I'd keep it simple. But I'm building this for somebody else, so I think I'm going to go ahead and dress the edges. I'm going to look through my router bits and see what's there and see what I can come up with. Turns out I don't have a whole lot for edge dressing. I had this beading bit that, you know, I've used it before for a small frame, but this is wider. I don't like it, so I'm going to keep it simple. Just break the edges by hand. So next phase would be start cutting some miters. Here's another quick tip. Sawdust. Since all this was that pine stuff and not plywood, it's okay for the compost because there's no glues in there. So okay, cutting miters. There's lots of ways to do it. A lot of it depends on your equipment and what you're doing, what you have, and what you're comfortable with. Today I'm using just a regular old miter saw. It's not as accurate, say built up a big jig with the table saw and use stop blocks and things like that. But for me today, it's faster and easier. And these are going to get painted. So if I do have just a little slop, I mean, I can come back and putty and no one's going to know the difference. But the key for doing them with the miter saw is that you want to double up your stock. double it up, make your pairs. That way, you know it's going to end up being square. Then not lose the pairs. Today I'm building like 7 frames, so once I get pieces together, I'm going to throw a little tape around it, so when I start gluing and nailing them up, I know which ones go together. I know they're going to be the same. I know it's going to be square. Okay, so if you're making multiple frames that are all the same size, you really only have to measure twice. Why? Well, measure the first one, then use that as your template for your second one. And mark it off, good to go. Okay, miters are all done. This is about what I have left for scrap. So I'm gonna make one more, make a square, small one. It should work, and very little left over. So I measured right. So there's my scrap heap. Looks like I got some kindling for winter. But got them all cut, all bundled up. Time to fire up the old compressor, get out the clamps, and start gluing up. I'm going to do a little cleanup first, get the car back in, and work out in the sun, get a little vitamin D.
Again, sawdust, good for the compost.
Okay, day 2. Frames are put together, putting the holes, getting ready to cut the panels. I don't know if you could really tell, but got a big sheet of 1/2-inch MDF back here. There's pros and cons with MDF. Since these are actually going to be chalkboards, I wanted a smooth surface that didn't show grain. Bad things about MDF is that it's heavy and kicks up a whole lot of dust. Make sure you wear a mask on that one. So essentially, you're going to start ripping this down and be ready for prime, and then paint, I guess. So that's where we stand. Okay, I got the panels cut. I didn't take footage of that because it's pretty straightforward. Measure and rip. But they're sanded, patched, wiped down, ready for primer. I got a little cleanup to do. Here's all that MDF dust. This does not go into compost. Okay, so the frames primed, workbench. Got the back sides over here primed. I've learned my lesson, and prime the back side first. That way when you set it down, if something sticks, it's not on the good side. So for anyone that listens to the podcast, you know what I'm going to start doing while I'm watching paint dry. More waiting for paint to dry. Okay, frames are drying. Pretty straightforward. No no real tips with this stuff. Got the Rust-Oleum chalkboard paint going. They're back here drying. So far looks pretty good. Pretty happy with it. I'm gonna go ahead and do 2 coats. It's kind of expensive stuff, but a little goes a long way. So since these are gonna be used frequently and daily, I think 2 coats is definitely in order. Maybe 3. We'll see. But so far, pretty happy with the project. Okay, I didn't have enough clamps for all 8 frames to glue and caulk in the bottoms for the panels, so used some weights. Seemed to have worked. So time to paint the backside and wrap this project up.